Okay, so let's get right into it. Today, we're breaking down a pretty unique intelligence briefing from a source they call Juniper. And it's all about the anatomy of a narrative reversal. Basically, how a targeted hit on someone's reputation can just completely blow up in the attacker's face.
All right, so the briefing opens with a really critical point. The attention you're getting, the heat you're feeling, it's not random. It is absolutely not a coincidence, and it's not someone just kind of stumbling across your name.
And that's the key, right there. This is deliberate. It's an intentional, focused effort to find a weakness, to find some kind of flaw by digging, and I mean deep, into your background. It's methodical, and it has a very specific goal.
So let's be super clear. This whole thing is systematic. It's a process, and it's designed to build a very specific, very negative case against you. They're basically hoping to find any little thing to justify a story they've already decided is true.
And they're using every tool in the playbook, right? Pulling documents, checking all the timelines, combing through records, asking questions. But here's the fascinating part, and this is what the briefing really zeroes in on. There's this huge disconnect between what they thought they were going to find and what the evidence is actually telling them.
And this right here is where the whole situation just pivots, because every page they turn, every single record they pull, it directly contradicts that negative story they were fed about you. It's like the truth itself is just refusing to play along with their narrative.
So you've got this split, right? On one side, you have the fictional character they tried to create, unstable, irresponsible, difficult. But then on the other side, you have the reality the evidence just keeps pointing to, someone who's centered, perceptive, precise, and incredibly resilient.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because a pattern starts to show up. Their entire strategy, their whole case, was built on one single core assumption, that under all this pressure, you would just crumble.
But you didn't. Not even close. Instead of falling apart, you stayed centered. You stayed perceptive. You chose your moves with a kind of precision that just completely baffled them.
I mean, they were so sure you would react impulsively. They were literally banking on you becoming emotional and reckless, making yourself an easy target they could corner.
And you weren't. Your refusal to fit their little story, that simple act of just keeping your composure, that's the very first thing that causes their confidence to start cracking.
So let's look at how that one crack starts to get wider. Because it's not just the people who started this that are getting nervous. The actual investigators, the ones doing the digging, they're starting to notice something's off.
And you can see it right here in the data from the briefing. The investigators' observations are becoming crystal clear. They see your steadiness, your smart choices, all lining up with the truth. And at the same time, they're watching the other party's story completely unravel into a mess of contradictions. And this slide just perfectly explains what happens next. The authority figure who kicked this whole thing off starts to enter what the briefing calls the first stages of panic. Why? Because the weapon they aimed at you has just spun around and is now pointed right back at them.
Yeah, they plan to paint you as the problem, but as the briefing says, the receipts tell a very different story. Every document they look at just strengthens your side and makes them look more and more inconsistent.
And boom, this is the tipping point. This is the moment the whole thing reverses. The whispers, the quiet questions from the people reviewing the case, they're not about you anymore. They're about them and what their real motives were for targeting you to begin with.
And this is the question that changes everything. Like the briefing says, it's a doorway that the authority figure behind this never, ever wanted anyone to open.
So get this. The entire focus has flipped. The spotlight is off you. Now, people are starting to talk. Testimonies are surfacing. Colleagues who stayed quiet before are now quietly admitting that they saw things that just didn't sit right.
And every single one of these memories, every piece of re-examined evidence, it all starts to line up, pointing to one powerful conclusion that just becomes impossible to ignore.
The investigation revealed the real truth. This was never about protecting the organization. It was about protecting their own ego. Your intelligence, it scared them. Your resilience, it irritated them. And your independence completely messed with their need for control. You weren't the problem. You were a threat to their ego.
And now, their own behavior gets pulled into the light, and it follows this classic pattern of unraveling. Their explanations start falling apart, their confidence cracks, their whole tone shifts from being in charge to being defensive, and suddenly, that path to accountability is right there in front of them.
And here's the ultimate irony in all of this. Everything they threw at you, every fabricated story, every quiet attempt to corner you, has now become evidence in your favor.
The very investigation that was designed to be your downfall is actually becoming your elevation. The attempts they made to control you are the exact reason they are now losing all control.
The trust has completely shifted. And as the Juniper briefing points out, once trust shifts like that, it almost never returns to the person who broke it. The truth isn't just a fact anymore, it's a force, and right now, it's orbiting you.
This briefing gives us a very clear answer to that final question. It shows that in the end, when a false story collapses under the weight of the truth, the consequences don't land on you, they land exactly where they belong, on the people who created it.